According to the InterNACHI Home Inspection Standards of Practice, the inspector shall inspect the exterior wall covering materials, the eaves, soffit, and fascia, a representative number of windows, all the exterior doors, flashing and trim, adjacent walkways and driveways, stairs, steps, stoops, stairways, and ramps, porches, patios, decks, balconies, and carports, railings, guards, and handrails, and vegetation, surface drainage, and retaining walls and grading around the property where they may adversely affect the structure due to moisture intrusion. The home inspector also should describe the type of exterior wall covering materials, and the home inspector shall report as a need of correction any improper spacing between intermediate balusters, spindles, and rails.
And now we're going to move on to section 3.2, which is the exterior. And typically I've got a routine that I use in my inspections, and my routine tries to follow the SOP, but in some cases I do exceed the SOP a little bit, but during this time we're going to stick with the SOP, and any time that I exceed that, I will let you know. So right now, the first thing I'm going to do is take a front shot of the exterior of the home. Okay, now I'm going to move up to the house. Typically I want to start over in that corner, which in this case is going to be the northeast corner of the house, and I'm going to work my way back this way clockwise around the exterior of the property. The first thing I do is I want to take another photograph of just this side of the home. Okay, now we're going to be starting from this northeast corner. I'm going to start going clockwise around the entire house. Basically what I'm looking for is any potential drainage problems, grading issues. I'm going to be checking the exterior walls. In the brick, I'm going to be checking for mortar cracks, cracked bricks, step type cracking, which could be coming off of each corner of a structure, which could be structural issues. I'm going to be looking at the gutters, looking for icicles, because this is the winter time. Check my downspouts, make sure they're secure to the house, and I look for my extensions. As I'm moving on, I'm also going to be looking for cracking on the stem wall of the foundation of the exposed part. In some cases you won't be able to see much, but I'm still going to look. I do look up here, and the first thing I see is an icicle hanging from the soffit vent, which could mean we have potential moisture somewhere leaking back either under the shingles. It could be coming back behind the gutter. So I'm going to take a photograph of that. And again, I see more icicles. These are behind the gutter. This is all can also be an issue. We may have a gutter that's full of leaves, and the water's leaking past the gutter and flowing backwards behind the gutter. We may not have a drip ledge or drip edge flashing, preventing that. So that's a concern there. The other thing I see right away when I'm walking across the front of the house is I've got some tree overhang here, and we want to get that, get a recommendation in to get that trimmed back from the house. These overhang issues like this can create other issues with moisture, all sorts of different things that can happen. We could have tree roots intruding into the house. So we want to make sure we get this all trimmed back.
I'll add one more comment about the icicle on the soffit vent, that could be an indication of some ice dam action on the roof too. So that is certainly a fairly significant concern for us.
One of the things I see here right away, we've got this cantilever coming out from the front of the house, and up here on this roof section I don't see any drip edge flashing at all. Plus, you know, potentially there should possibly be some gutter there as well to catch anything coming off of that short section of the roof.
And we would like to see some kick-out flashing up there to divert any runoff away from the edge of the stucco surfaces there, which are pretty vulnerable to water penetration in that configuration we see there.
I do see a little piece of kick out there, but it's really not enough.
Yeah.
Up here on our stucco, we want to look for any cracking that might be coming off the corners of the openings of the windows or doors. Everything here looks pretty good, pretty tight. We also want to look to see if we have any issues with cracking or no caulking along the windows. We do have some pretty minor cracking on the bottom of this the window here where the stucco meets the window. I probably would like to see a little bit more of some kind of a sealer there to keep out any potential moisture from getting back behind the stucco. You got a little bit of cracking over here as well where it meets the house along here. Probably would like to see some caulking of some sort here. We also want to check our hose bibs. We'll just let this one run for a couple seconds. Looking for potential leaks from the packing nut here. I don't really see any. In a lot of cases, the packing nut can be, the sealant could be dried or may not be tightened enough, so we get a little bit of leakage there. You always want to note that in your report.
One more thing while we're standing right here, looking at our little nook here, we see a little tiny bit of damage on the stucco up there, and while that is probably on the plant-on detail, architectural detail here, and doesn't go through, we'd still make a note of that and recommend repair, even if that particular repair is only cosmetic.
We also have additional tree here in the front where the tree limbs are getting pretty close to the structure. I'm going to make a note of this one as well. Especially if it gets too close to the stucco part of the house, where the wind can actually create these limbs moving, and it can scratch holes or penetrate the stucco finish. One of the reasons I take a photograph of every side of the house is that way it's a marker that I use. So when I walk down that side of the house, I know that that's the side that I'm on. So I'm going to take another photograph of this southeast section of the house. Again, we're looking for our downspouts to be secure. We're looking for our rain gutter extensions. We got some snow coverage here, which makes our inspection pretty difficult, but we're going to go ahead and take a look up here anyway, just to see if we have anything that's going on here that we can possibly see. Check the railings for tightness. We've got an outlet here. We're going to go ahead and test this one. It's a GFCI, or it should be. Okay, we had correct polarity. I did trip it, so when we move into the house, we're going to have to reset that. One of the things I like to do too when I'm out here is to go ahead and check this screen door to see if our closing device is working properly. And a pretty obvious problem here on the door jamb where the closing device has pulled a chunk of the door casing out. So I'm going to get a photograph of this. The one thing I'm going to look for now is our safety chain up here at the top. It looks to me like potentially this spring is not the original. This is a pretty weak spring, which could have allowed the wind to catch this door and overextend it, which caused our damage down here on the closing device. So probably going to take a picture of the spring. Okay, we're just completed the front entry door, screen door. So now I'm up here on the porch and I just look up in this corner and I see some cracking up here where the stucco meets the brick. Again, it's probably a crack that should be repaired or filled. We don't want any kind of moisture penetration into our stucco, so I'm going to make a note of that. And I will say this much about stucco. In my reports, I usually note in there that any type of patching that's done should be done with a material that's compatible with the existing stucco. You know, if the crack is too big or so forth, you shouldn't use caulking like just like latex or silicone, because normally it won't stay.
One thing we see here on the driveway is evidence of some past repair work. You can see here this little off-color plug. Got another one right here. Have some more scattered around, but that's what they look like. This is almost certainly mud jacking. So mud jacking is they drill a hole through the slab, they pump in a concrete slurry that literally lifts the slab back into position. So we had some settling here in the driveway. They came in, they did this mud jacking to lift it or put it back into a decent condition. So this isn't a defect, but it is something that when you see it, you can explain to your clients what it is and why they did it. But this doesn't give us a concern out of the gate that we have an issue here. It's something that was just simply repaired, and that's all.
Okay, so Lon just pointed out the mud jacking that was performed here, and we're going to carry on with the rest of this driveway inspection. And noticed a lot of ice coverage here, ice and snow. I'm going to note that with some pictures. Our entryway steps, there's a lot of snow and buildup. We've got a big drift here too on the driveway. I'm going to go ahead and photograph that. So this portion of the driveway, because we're doing a limited visual inspection, we can't see that. So we want to make sure we note that in our report so there isn't any issues that come up later on that might be happening under here and perhaps would come up when we can see it. I do notice some cracking and some spalling. We got some spalling here in the driveway. I usually note that. Spalling is usually created by de-icer usage on concrete. It's very hard on the concrete surface. We've got some other cracking here. These cracks are about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 3/16, and then they kind of go down to some very hairline type cracks. I'm going to recommend that they seal these cracks off. They have used a sealant here in the expansion, but it's given out already. There are products on the market that you can use that are more of a polytype based product that will stay in these cracks and it will move and expand with the concrete. Moving up the driveway, we can see over here we've got a fairly substantial crack here where a section of the concrete slab has broken and sunk right here. It's probably about 3/8 of an inch or more. We've got some pretty good spalling going on here, both sides of this crack. So I'm going to note this crack here because this is probably considered a minor movement and cracking, but we should note that because it could move some more. We may want to get that crack sealed or repaired. Up along here, we're going to go ahead and move on to the rest of the exterior. I'm looking up here at this fascia. I see some water damage fascia up here. So I'm going to focus in on that and take a photograph. I can see a water streak coming from behind the gutter, going right to that spot where the water damage has occurred. And it looks like we have more than one. So we want to note this in our report because we probably got some ice damming or plugged up gutters or something of that sort that's creating this water going back behind the gutter itself. So now we've got fascia that probably needs to be repaired or replaced. Up along this side of the house, we're back to brick again. We want to check our caulking around our windows. I can see here on this window, we've got part of the trim, the exterior trim is cracked and has been filled with caulking. I might just note that. Anytime we've got any kind of cracking or open, any kind of an opening on the outside, there's always a potential for water intrusion into the house. Moving on up here, I can see some cracking here on the edge of the stucco where it meets the brick. And I can see the fiber behind the surface. So this is a pretty good opening we've got here. And it doesn't look like it could be structural, but it's probably from shrinkage.
Could be thermal expansion and contraction there.
And get a photograph of that. Now I look over here to the right and we've got some more fascia damage from water. I have a gutter that's leaking at the seam. It's also leaking over the gutter as well. So we may have some seams here that aren't sealed correctly. I'm going to back up here. I don't see any kick-out flashing next to the house. So probably want to take a photograph of that and recommend some kick-out flashing. So we get that water over into the gutter away from the side of the house. And now, coming along the front of the garage, we can see some discolored icicles behind the gutters. Again, that's telling us we've got some water leakage behind the gutter. We want to get that noted and have that looked at by a professional. But I also see on the outside of the gutter, I see a lot of streaks or water has been coming over the top, coming down. So we may have a full gutter. We could have a lot of debris in the gutter. Could be caused by ice, and we can see it right here. We have a full gutter of ice and snow. It's leaking over the front, but I can also see potential right here of more fascia damage. We've got several areas along here. Down to the corner, we got quite a bit of leakage here at this gutter seam. So I want to get that noted. And we got some fascia water damage here. And this piece here is damaged pretty well, so we want to note this pretty good in our report. This type of fascia is like a hardboard fiber type fascia. It doesn't do well with water damage. Okay, I'm over here at the southeast corner of the house, and now I'm going to take a reference photo of the south side, and we're going to go down the south side with that inspection portion. And I want to take a reference photo here. Basically, I'm going to move on down. I'm still concerned about all the same things. You know, cracking in the brick. Make sure our downspouts, our extensions are attached. You know, we're pretty concerned about the rain gutter system because that's what helps keep the moisture away from the foundation of the house. So we don't want any water intrusion potential. So we want to make sure our grading and our gutter system are all intact and are working well. I see along here we've got some drifting. This makes it very difficult for the inspector to inspect the grade on the house. So we're going to note that. I'll put it in my report that the grading really couldn't be viewed that well because of the snow coverage. The window on this side's got some snow coverage in the base here. I am going to clear this away a little bit because I want to get a view of what our caulking looks like here. So I'm looking just for a good bead of caulking here that's still good and tight, keeping the moisture out. We have a satellite dish here on this side of the house. We really don't look at that. All right, we've got some tree overhang here. I want to make sure we get this trim back too. This is going to be over on the southwest corner of the house. I might mention that typically we don't like to see trees much closer than 10 feet to the house structure. The root system can penetrate and put pressure on the foundation. They create drainage problems. If the wind comes up, they could get knocked over into the house and cause damage to the roof. So we want to make sure we keep those back far enough to alleviate all those issues. Okay, we're over here on the southwest corner of the house, and I'm going to go ahead and take a reference photo here so I know where I'm at when I sit down to do my report. And moving on down through here, we're going to use the same concerns that we've had before. It's going to be hard to determine much with the grading here because of the snow coverage. We're looking for any potential cracking in the brick, and we do see some here in the mortar. It's pretty slight, so we want to probably put a note in there about that. We want to make sure we get this sealed up. I always like to pay special attention to the corner on a brick home, because if I see step cracking off of a corner on both sides, that's a sign you may have some structural issues inside the house. Pay close attention to that.
So on the small part of our foundation we can see here, we have this line here, this spall line here, that looks a little bit like maybe a pour line where they added some additional concrete right on top and they didn't get it tamped together quite right. I don't see any rebar peeking through, so I don't think it's a question of rebar too close to the surface of the concrete. But in any event, this just looks like a cosmetic condition and does not look like evidence of a structural concern going on with that. And we can see a little hairline crack in our concrete there, but concrete, when it cures, it shrinks and it cracks. So a few hairline cracks are not a concern.
Okay, moving on down. We're on the west side of the house now. Okay, first thing I see is some stair step cracking here in the brick. This soffit portion here is the back corner of the garage where it meets the house. I'm going to go ahead and photograph this. This potentially can indicate some past movement in the structure. Probably would recommend that this may be looked at by a structural engineer. We got a lot of gaps here. At the very least, we want to make sure these gaps get repaired and sealed. But it comes down here, extends down probably about 4 or 5 feet in length. So we want to make sure we get that in our report. And right to the left of that, I see a pretty substantial crack here in the brick. But this is a very vertical crack, goes all the way down. Looks like possibly there has been an attempt at repair here in the past. We've got some loose brick pieces up here at the top. So I think in terms of recommendations here, I'm probably going to have my client employ a structural engineer to have them look at this. It looks to me like we've had some movement of the garage and it has pulled away and settled away from the house. So I'm going to check this windowsill here, check the caulking. And this caulking is in pretty poor condition here. We've got some gaps. I want to get that repaired, put that in the report. We've got some gaps over here as well, but this could be associated with the structural issues in relationship to the brick moving. We're going to go ahead and include our air conditioner in the exterior. Although today it's too cold to operate the system, anytime it's below 65 degrees, you take the chance of damaging the compressor. But we are going to note a few things. The first thing I see right away is that the unit itself is at a level. It's obvious that it's tilting down away from the house. We're also going to look up here to make sure we have insulation on our refrigerant lines. We have a little bit of a gap here, but they've plugged it up with some steel wool. Check our electrical here. We got our disconnect here. It seems secure. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture of the tag here, because I want to know when it was manufactured. I also want to know what the rating is on this, energy rating. And so I'll just keep that serial number and model number in my database. You see that we've got 2 vents here. One's probably could come from an interior exhaust fan in the basement bathroom. The other is probably the dryer. Check to make sure they're not plugged up. We have screens on for any critters that might want to get in. And they have the dampers. Should be good there. Check our caulking on the windows again. We do have a crack on this window over here in the bottom corner, and it's actually in the window material itself. We've got a clad outer coating on this. It's a plastic, and it has cracked right there, which would be an easy point for water to get in and start to work on the bottom of that window. So we want to make sure we get that repaired. We got a hose bib here. We're going to go ahead and test it while we're here. Okay, we got another window here. We got a crack in this one. Lower right hand corner. Very similar to that last window. So we want to make sure we note that and get a repair there. We've got cracking, caulking on the sides. We'll note that. Need to get some new caulking in there.
So 2 more things to discuss here real quick. Follow continuation of what Ray was pointing out on the cracking in the brick here. Something that's very common is to see a crack go through a window at almost a 45-degree angle. And as we look up to the upper left corner of that same window that Ray found the crack in, you see the crack continuing on up to the soffit there. Someone has done a little bit of caulking repair on that portion of the crack, probably because it was gapped pretty appreciably there. And they did a little bit of repair, but all that is part of the same cracking and movement that Ray was pointing out earlier. And then the other thing is, so this is a brick veneer, and so a brick veneer is not structural. So there's going to be a gap between it and the wall sheathing underneath. And so if moisture find some way to get in around, for instance, the windows here. It has a place to drain out, and we can get a little air movement in there through weep holes in the bottom course of the brick. However, here somebody has caulked over the weep holes. So these weep holes here look like they're about every 6 feet, maybe 4 feet apart, depending on what part of the house they're on. People will caulk these for all kinds of reasons. They think that, oops, somebody made a mistake because there's a gap in the brick, or maybe they saw a wasp fly into the gap and they go, oh my goodness, I got to do something. In any event, these have a purpose in the wall, and we're going to recommend that they clean out this caulking and re-establish the weep hole there.
Okay, we're back here. We're still on the west side, so we're going to continue on with that. Right here by the patio, we have total snow and ice coverage here. I'm going to go ahead and note this. It's going to restrict our inspection to the point where we really can't see anything. Check our downspout. I can see right away we've got a gutter seam leak right here in the corner. It's dripping, so we'll move up here onto the patio. One of the things I like to do is take a look at these thresholds on the patio door. But in this case, it's got a lot of ice in it. I'm not going to be able to really view it that well. You always want to check this to make sure that all of the fastener covers are on, that there's no way for water to get in onto the threshold and into the house. We've got a lot of icicles along this fascia. We've got some back here in the corner, some out here. We've got several over here. It's pretty obvious we've got some issues on the roof. The other thing I'm seeing right away is that we've got a surface difference here on the shingles that I can see. I don't really have an explanation for it just yet because we can't see it because of the snow, but there is some issue going on here with the roofing. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture from down here. We're going to have to probably recommend a roofer come in and evaluate the situation here. I see a stain here on the stucco. It looks like it's soot, possibly from maybe a grill that was setting here. We're going to go ahead and note that. It doesn't look like there's any stucco damage, but looking down, right next to the patio door here, I see a crack in the stucco here. We want to get that in our report. Recommend that that gets sealed or repaired. Again, I'll try to take a look at this threshold. Looks like everything's secure there. Usually this piece right in here snaps in and it covers the fasteners that secure the bottom of the threshold to the frame of the house. We got some inner cracking here on the stucco where it meets the door. Got some down here. I'm going to put that in as well. We just like to get these all sealed up. As well up here, some cracking where it meets the soffit. Okay, now we're on the last side of the house. This is going to be the north side. I'm going to take a photo just to mark where I'm at. We're going to go ahead and note this tree overhang. I want to recommend this gets trimmed back. This tree actually is too close. 10 feet is what I like to recommend. This one's probably 5 feet away, 5.5 feet. Gonna check our caulking here at the base of the window. Everything looks pretty good here, pretty tight. On this window here, you can see some cracking up here where the window's just below the lintel. I want to get those sealed up. Any gaps or cracks. We're on the north side of the house. This is where a lot of the weather pattern comes, and we're going to get driving rain and snow on the north side. We want to make sure everything's pretty well sealed over here. A little safety tip here, while you're around the window wells, make sure that you stay away from them. You don't want to step in there and have a bad accident. There's a lot of ice in this sill here, so we may not be able to get this all out. But the caulking looks pretty good. We've got a loose screen on this window. We're going to note that. And I look down here at the window well, and this screen is out of there too. Although this one here looks like it goes on another window. So I'm going to go ahead and just lay this down in here and take a photograph of it. I think it goes to that window right there. This top caulking here looks pretty good. Looks like somebody has repaired this fairly recently. We're almost to the end down here to the opposite corner. Check our weep holes and our brick. These look open back here. We're up to the backflow preventer for the sprinkler system. They've got a winterized cover on here. I'm not going to take this off. It's really out of my scope for my inspection. I don't do sprinkler systems. The only thing I will do, I will say this much, is that I will look at the backflow preventer and make sure we don't have any leakage or cracks or freezing.
One thing we see on the north side of the house here that we often see, on the underside of the gutters, you can see some black speckling here. Now sometimes this will even be on siding on the north side, but here it's on the gutter. That's almost certainly a mold growing there, but we're going to call it a mold-like substance. In any event, it's only cosmetic. So it's not a mold, oh my goodness, red flag concern. It's just make that observation to your clients that it's something that's cosmetic in this location here, not causing problems, and can be just cleaned off without any big concern associated with it.
This concludes 3.2 of the exterior in the SOP.